The courtroom was not simply full that morning, it was overflowing. A strange, breathless quiet had settled over it, the kind that descends when everyone inside can sense that something is about to detonate. People occupied every inch of the wooden benches, shoulder pressed to shoulder, leaning forward, speaking in low murmurs, eyes pulling toward the courtroom doors every few seconds. Then the bailiff stepped forward and announced the case: Tara Collins versus Chase Langford. The room shifted. A sound moved through the gallery like a lit spark crossing dry grass, because the name Langford did not belong to ordinary people. In this city, that name meant money, influence, glass towers with private elevators, real estate arrangements whispered about in the corridors of City Hall. It was a name inscribed on luxury developments, printed on charity plaques, entered on political donor lists, and attached to buildings so tall they appeared to carve their initials into the skyline itself. When Chase Langford entered the courtroom, he looked exactly like a man who believed that name could protect him from anything the world might place in his path. He was 28 years old, tall, clean-cut, and assembled with the kind of effortless perfection that money purchases before breakfast. His navy suit had the appearance of something custom constructed. His shoes looked as though no sidewalk had ever touched them. A diamond watch caught the fluorescent light every time his wrist moved. He did not enter that room like a defendant. He entered it like an owner making a routine inspection of one of his properties. That was the first thing people absorbed. The second was the smirk. Small, controlled, carrying a trace of boredom, the expression of someone who had genuinely never heard the word no. Not from teachers, not from police, not from employees or suppliers or anyone who depended on a salary, a favor, a contribution, or a connection to people like him. When Chase settled at the defendant's table, he did not appear nervous or ashamed. He produced his phone and looked at it. Judge Judy looked down at the file in front of her, then raised her eyes slowly. "Mr. Langford," she said, her voice sharp and even, "you are being sued by Miss Tara Collins for property damage in the amount of $78,000. She contends that you and two companions vandalized her cafe following a confrontation. Is that what this case concerns?" Chase barely redirected his attention. "Allegedly," he said, stretching the word out as though it entertained him. A ripple passed through the audience. Judge Judy's eyebrow shifted by a fraction. Anyone who had watched her for more than 5 minutes understood exactly what that meant. "Put the phone away," she said. "This is not a lounge." Chase glanced up, offered a practiced smile, and slid the device into his jacket. "Of course, Your Honor," he said. The courtesy in his tone was calibrated to the edge of mockery. Across the aisle sat Tara Collins. She was in her early 40s, wearing a modest blouse, her hair pulled back, her hands pressed tightly together in her lap. The exhaustion on her face was the kind that no amount of preparation can conceal, not weakness, not collapse. Simply the fatigue of someone who had been fighting a battle that had already extracted too much from her. But something else occupied her face as well, a quiet intensity, the kind that surfaces when fear has already taken everything it can reach, and the only remaining direction is forward. Judge Judy turned another page. "The report states," she said, "that on March 21st, Mr. Langford entered your business with two companions after hours. A confrontation followed. Items were damaged. You contend that he threatened your employees and informed them that his father owned the block. Mr. Langford, do you dispute that?" Chase tilted back. "Your Honor," he said with a soft exhale that carried amusement, "this has been expanded into something considerably larger than what actually occurred. My friends and I stopped by after the posted hours. A chair may have been knocked over. A table may have shifted. These things happen. I offered to cover any costs that same evening, but Ms. Collins decided to escalate the situation. I suspect that once she understood who I was, she recognized an opportunity." Judge Judy examined him without blinking. "You offered to pay?" "Yes. I see no documentation of that." Chase offered a small shrug. "It was a conversation. Not everything requires paperwork." Then he produced the smile again. Business owners in her position tend to exaggerate once a Langford is involved. The courtroom responded immediately. A low sound moved through the gallery. Tara flinched, but held her silence. Judge Judy's pen went still. She looked up without hurry. "People like her?" she repeated. Chase gave a casual gesture. "I meant proprietors of small independent businesses. When things become financially difficult, they look for external parties to hold responsible. It happens frequently." Judge Judy said nothing at all. Somehow that silence landed harder than anything verbal could have. The room tightened around him. Her pen tapped once against the surface of the desk. Then she turned to Tara. "Ms. Collins," she said, "tell me what happened." Tara drew in a breath. Her voice trembled at the start. "He arrived around 10:30 at night," she said. "We were in the process of closing. The espresso machines had already been cleaned down. My manager told him politely that we were no longer open, but he laughed. He said, 'Do you know who I am? My family owns this building.'" She paused and swallowed. "When my manager continued to decline, he became angry. He knocked over a chair. He pushed over one of our display stands. We asked him to leave. He told us we would regret it. The following morning, our front windows were broken." Judge Judy turned back to Chase. "Did you threaten her?" Chase produced a quiet sound of amusement. "Your Honor, people make statements when they are frustrated. You will regret it is simply a turn of phrase. Do you have evidence that you did not return and cause the damage?" Chase's expression widened. "Do I require evidence to disprove something absurd?" My father's attorney addressed the police report. "There was nothing connecting me to any of this. Honestly, I am unclear why this proceeding is happening at all." That sentence landed badly. Even his attorney made a small adjustment in his chair. Tara lowered her eyes. "I determine what merits this court's time, Mr. Langford," Judge Judy said. He tilted his head. "Naturally, Your Honor. I meant no offense. I only believe we should use our time efficiently. I have a meeting in Midtown following this." Judge Judy regarded him steadily. "You will be late." A soft sound moved through the audience. Chase did not join it. For the first time, the smirk shifted. His jaw registered something. His composure had been touched, and everyone in the room could feel where. "I hope you appreciate, Judge," he said, his voice dropping in temperature, "that my father and I have contributed generously to a range of city programs, judicial scholarship funds included." The bailiff's head moved toward him. The audience gasped. Even Tara appeared briefly horrified. Judge Judy settled back. "Is that so?" Chase shrugged as though he had simply offered a piece of relevant context. "Yes. So let us not allow this to become personal. This is a misunderstanding. You handle considerably more significant matters than this one." The weight of the silence that followed pressed against every wall in the room. Judge Judy folded her hands deliberately in front of her. "People like me?" she asked. Chase smiled, entirely unaware of the ground moving beneath him. "Come now, Judge. You have likely seen my father's name on contribution plaques. He helps sustain the system. We are all components of the same structure." And then he said the words, the ones that changed everything. "Relax," Chase said, his voice casual and unhurried. "I own half this city. Technically, I own you as well." The room froze. The audience produced a gasp, so collective and sharp, it sounded as though the air had been removed from the building all at once. The bailiff went motionless. Tara's eyes went wide. Judge Judy did not move, not immediately. For 3 full seconds, she said absolutely nothing. Her face communicated no fear, no confusion. It communicated the particular stillness that arrives just before fury becomes something disciplined and precise. The hum of the overhead lights seemed to grow louder. Chase sat there wearing that arrogant half-smile, completely unaware that he had just crossed a line with no path back across it. The sentence hovered over the courtroom without being repeated. "I own you." It echoed through the room without sound. Even the people in the back rows appeared reluctant to breathe. When Judge Judy finally spoke, her voice was quiet. Too quiet. "Would you care to repeat that, Mr. Langford?" Chase lifted his chin. He misread her composure as softness. "It was not an insult," he said. "It is a statement of fact. Langford Development, Langford Equity, Langford Energy. My family finances this city. We underwrite programs. We construct courthouses. We invest in the infrastructure that communities depend on every day. He gestured toward the ceiling as though the room itself were among his holdings. So when I say I own you, I am not referring to you as a person. I mean the system, the buildings, the institutions, the surrounding world. All of it operates on Langford Capital. The gallery stirred. Tara stared at him as though she could not accept that he was still speaking. Under her breath, she whispered that he was really saying this. Judge Judy's focus remained locked on him. Mr. Langford, she said, each word shaped with precision. This courtroom operates on something your money does not purchase. She leaned forward. Truth. Then her voice sharpened. And you are about to learn how costly dishonesty can become? Chase was not finished diminishing himself. He settled back, almost theatrical, in his relaxation. Your Honor, I think you are receiving this too personally. I did not come here to cause offense, but let us speak plainly. You do not genuinely believe she has a legitimate case, do you? My father resolved the police matter. It was closed. No charges filed. No proof established. This is simply good television. That phrase shifted the atmosphere again. Good television. As though Tara's destroyed cafe was entertainment. As though the courtroom was a production set. As though justice was something to be smiled through. Judge Judy placed both hands flat on the bench and leaned forward. Let me be clear, she said. This is not television to me. This is a courtroom. This is justice. I do not pretend here. I do not perform. And if you arrived expecting a stage, you have walked into entirely the wrong room. For the first time, Chase's confidence flickered, only briefly, only partially. But everyone saw it. His eyes moved to his lawyer. The lawyer did not return the look. Judge Judy opened the file again. You stated your father addressed the police report. I have read that report. I have also reviewed the supplemental evidence submitted by Ms. Collins. She turned slightly. Ms. Collins, describe what occurred after the incident. Tara pressed her hands together. After he left, I filed a report with the police, she said. They told me an investigation would follow. 2 days later, I received a call indicating the case had been closed due to insufficient evidence. When I went to retrieve our security footage, the files had been corrupted. She steadied herself. I subsequently learned that someone connected to Langford Property Management had contacted my landlord and indicated that the building's security system should be replaced as a courtesy. The system was removed the following day. Judge Judy's expression sharpened. You are saying your evidence was removed. Yes, Your Honor. And I have the email documenting the maintenance authorization. The bailiff carried the papers to the bench. Judge Judy reviewed them quickly. Langford Property Management, she said aloud. Approved by Executive Operations. She looked directly at Chase. That is your father's company. Chase shifted in his chair. We manage thousands of properties. I do not personally review individual maintenance requests. Judge Judy looked across the top of her glasses. Interesting. Moments ago, you owned half the city. Now you cannot account for a single security system. Which version of you should this court credit? The man who controls everything or the child who knows nothing? A few people in the gallery laughed quietly. Chase's face tightened. Do you find this entertaining? He said. Do you understand who my father actually is? Judge Judy answered immediately. No. The room fell quiet. And that, she continued, is your difficulty. You have spent your entire life entering rooms where everyone placed excessive importance on that answer. The words reached him. Chase blinked. For the first time that morning, no immediate response came. Judge Judy continued, her voice lower. I know exactly what you are, Mr. Langford. You were raised to believe your surname functions as armor, that wealth removes consequences, that influence can erase records, that silence has a purchase price. But this room, she indicated the space around her, this is where your father's money stops at the door. Tara's lips trembled. Thank you, she whispered. Judge Judy turned toward her, her tone softer. Do not thank me yet, Ms. Collins. Justice is not applause. It is restoration. Then her attention returned to Chase. Influence purchases quiet people. It will not purchase me. I have watched entitled men walk into this courtroom before. Some departed wiser. Some departed with considerably less than they arrived with. The distinction was always whether they learned to listen before the consequences found them. Chase scoffed. You believe a speech changes something? This is a program. You deliver your remarks, the audience responds, I write a check, and my father manages the noise before tomorrow morning. That is how the world operates. Judge Judy's eyes darkened. You believe justice is noise? She paused. Then you have never heard it clearly. The courtroom became still. Even Chase's lawyer leaned back as though he preferred not to remain associated with the defense table. Judge Judy turned another page. When she spoke again, her voice was almost surgical in its precision. Mr. Langford, you may believe yourself untouchable, but every empire constructed on arrogance eventually comes apart, and when the foundation is entitlement, it tends to collapse from within. Chase began to speak. You cannot address me in this manner. Oh, yes, I can, she said, cutting across him. Because the moment you entered this room, you ceased to be a Langford and became a defendant. In this courtroom, your name carries no weight. Your behavior does. The gavel came down. We will recess. Mr. Langford, I suggest you use that time to think carefully about who truly owns what. When the session resumed, the atmosphere had transformed entirely. The casual energy Chase Langford had carried through the doors with him that morning had vanished. No smirking, no slow confidence, no surveying the room as though it existed for his benefit. He was leaning over the defense table now, speaking sharply in a low voice to his attorney. His foot moved under the table. His jaw was set. His eyes made short trips toward the bench and then away. Judge Judy returned to her seat, and the gavel announced the resumption of court. Mr. Langford, she said evenly, I trust the recess allowed you to reconsider your earlier statements. Chase managed a forced version of composure. Yes, Your Honor, I recognize that my words may have been received as harsh. I apologize if anyone interpreted them as disrespectful. If, she repeated. He hesitated. I did not intend disrespect. There are times when people mistake confidence for arrogance. Judge Judy let that sit for a moment. Confidence, she said, her voice carrying a measured trace of cold amusement. Confidence tends to originate in earned achievement. Arrogance originates in entitlement. Let us determine which one we have been observing. She opened the thick folder. Prior to this hearing, I requested additional documentation. You stated there was no evidence connecting you to the damage at Ms. Collins's establishment. You described the situation as a misunderstanding. You said the police matter had been resolved. Is that accurate? Chase nodded, relieved to feel solid footing again. Yes, exactly. My father's attorneys cooperated fully. The matter was closed. Closed, Judge Judy said. Not resolved. Closed. The room quieted further. According to precinct records, the case was marked closed due to insufficient evidence. 2 detectives assigned to the matter were subsequently reassigned. 3 days after that, Langford Development Group made a donation of $75,000 to the precinct's pension fund. The courtroom seemed to lose air. Chase went motionless. His attorney rose slightly. Judge Judy looked at him before he could complete the movement. Do not. She had obtained this information through public records. Chase produced a thin laugh. That is philanthropy. My father donates regularly. Judge Judy leaned forward. Philanthropy that appears 3 days after your difficulty evaporates. Tell me, Mr. Langford, does your family's generosity consistently materialize alongside legal complications? The audience murmured. Tara gripped her hands together. Something close to hope moved across her tired face for the first time. Chase's jaw contracted. This is absurd. You cannot suggest my father had anything to do with. I am not examining your father, Judge Judy said, interrupting cleanly. I am examining your conduct, and your conduct to this point indicates privilege, evasion, and a deep familiarity with arrogance. She gestured toward the bailiff. Exhibit C. A small flash drive was placed on the desk. Judge Judy nodded toward the monitor. This is surveillance footage from Ms. Collins' insurance provider. Not from her landlord's system. It was automatically backed up to a remote server before the security equipment was removed. Chase's complexion changed, not dramatically yet, but the color drained out of it. The monitor activated. The footage was grainy, but the content was unmistakable. A nearly empty cafe, chairs stacked, lights reduced, staff finishing the closing process. Then the door opened. Chase Langford entered with two companions. There was no possible confusion about the identification. Same posture, same expensive suit, same quality of certainty that the space existed for him. He appeared to have been drinking, his arms moving broadly, his direction shifting toward the counter, his voice rising toward someone off camera. An employee approached. Chase pushed a chair aside. A display rack went over. Glass broke across the floor. Then his voice came through the audio clearly. "My father owns this block. You are going to regret this." The room went entirely silent. The footage ended. Judge Judy looked at him. "That was you." Chase swallowed. I was frustrated. They had been discourteous. "Stop." The word landed across the courtroom like a flat strike. "That is sufficient." She closed the file with a hard snap. "You damaged a woman's business because your pride was wounded. You threatened her employees, then used your father's name and resources to suppress her complaint. Allow me to ask you something, Mr. Langford. What is your dignity worth to you? The price of a window? A police report? Another person's silence?" His attorney leaned forward. "Your Honor, this line of questioning is entirely within my authority," Judge Judy said sharply. "Sit down." He sat. Judge Judy looked back at Chase. "You came here expecting a production. You believed this was another room where your father's resources could manage the outcome. But this is not theater, Mr. Langford. This is actual life. And in actual life, audiences do not applaud for the person who caused harm. The audience, however, did applaud softly at that. Judge Judy allowed it to pass. She turned to Tara. "Ms. Collins, there is something I want you to understand. People in his position protect their reputations, not their character. And occasionally the wall surrounding a reputation develops cracks." Tara wiped her eyes. "Yes, Your Honor." Chase's voice had gone quieter. "You do not understand how this works. My father corrects these situations. He will make this right." Judge Judy's reply was cold. "No, Mr. Langford. I will make it right." She allowed the sentence to occupy the room. "You have moved through your life as though power grants the permanent right to avoid apology. But power is responsibility, and you have demonstrated none of it here." She consulted the file again. "Before I proceed toward judgment, I want something entered into the record. You told this court you owned half this city. Your family may hold title to a considerable amount of property. But today, you are about to lose something that money has no mechanism to replace." She looked directly at his face. Credibility. The bailiff stood without movement beside the bench. The camera registered Chase staring at the table, his color gone, his lips sealed together. The person who had entered that room believing justice was purchasable was beginning to understand that he could not even arrange to borrow it. When Judge Judy returned from chambers, the room felt heavier. The lights above hummed. No one whispered. Everyone in the gallery watched her settle into her seat because her composure had evolved into something that carried pressure. She appeared collected, almost serene. But there was the quality of stored thunder in that serenity. Chase Langford looked reduced. The suit was still there. The watch still caught the light. But the person wearing those things had shifted. Exposure accomplishes that. It diminishes people who had been enlarged by illusion. "Mr. Langford," Judge Judy began, "before I deliver my ruling, I am going to give you one opportunity to account for something." Chase straightened, his grip finding the edge of the table. "Your Honor, I believe this has grown beyond its actual proportions." I expressed regret. The entire situation was misread and exaggerated. I never intended to cause offense, least of all to you, if my words were misinterpreted. "Wrong," Judge Judy cut across him. Her voice moved through the room like something sharp. "You told a sitting judge that you owned her. You mocked a business owner following the destruction of her property. You relied on your father's resources to suppress a police investigation and then described the contribution as generosity. And now you want to reduce all of that to a misinterpretation, the audience murmured. Chase swallowed. You do not appreciate what this will mean. My father does not tolerate visibility of this kind. Bad publicity, Judge Judy said. She leaned forward. You mean consequences. That sentence arrived harder than a shout would have. You have spent your life surrounded by individuals employed to manage the aftermath of your choices. I am not on your father's payroll. I do not concern myself with whose name appears on buildings or donor acknowledgments or contribution walls. I concern myself with truth. I concern myself with respect. And you appear to have a limited acquaintance with either, she indicated to the bailiff. Additional exhibits. Another folder was delivered to the bench, substantial in thickness, marked with a tab reading confidential background. Judge Judy moved through it. It appears this is not your first difficulty. Chase blinked. What do you mean? 3 years ago, Miami. Disorderly conduct. Charges dissolved shortly following a donation to a city revitalization initiative. A year later, Chicago. An assault allegation at a private venue. Case dismissed after the complainant withdrew. Last summer, the Hamptons. A hit-and-run accusation resolved in a private settlement. She looked up. Do you observe a pattern? Chase opened his mouth. Nothing emerged. Allow me to identify what I observe, Judge Judy said. A young man who was educated to believe that laws were inconveniences intended for other people. A portrait of what occurs when wealth protects misconduct instead of addressing it. A system that too frequently rewards influence and penalizes honesty. And an illusion arriving at its conclusion here. Tara sat without movement, tears present in her eyes. The room observed accountability taking shape. Chase made another attempt. Judge Judy, with all due respect. Do not use that phrase, she said immediately. You have displayed no respect whatsoever. Her voice increased in authority, not in wildness, in authority. You believe money constitutes power, but power without character is corruption, and corruption eventually encounters a wall it cannot purchase passage through. Chase's lawyer leaned toward him, his voice urgent and low. Chase ignored him. You are constructing an example out of me, he said. This is designed for your audience. You cannot publicly humiliate me because people want a moment of drama. Judge Judy answered without pause. I do not humiliate people, Mr. Langford. People accomplish that entirely on their own. I simply hold up the surface they reflect in. The gallery responded. Applause moved through it. This time the bailiff appeared in no particular hurry to bring it to a stop. Judge Judy waited for it to settle. Then she returned to Chase. You stated that you own half this city. Answer something for me. What will you own when your reputation no longer exists? When investors examine who represents the Langford name in public? When the public has watched what occurs? When your arrogance is placed under oath and recorded? Chase looked pale. Perspiration was visible at his temple. His voice had descended. You do not understand what this will do to me. Judge Judy's expression solidified. What this will do to you. She directed her attention toward Tara. What about what you did to her? Tara's voice broke open. He destroyed everything I built. Judge Judy's hand came down against the bench, not as a gavel strike, as punctuation. You entered a woman's place of business. You damaged her property. You threatened her livelihood. You then applied influence to suppress her complaint. And your primary concern at this moment is how accountability affects you. Chase surveyed the courtroom. For the first time all morning, he appeared to register that no one was coming. No aide, no father, no private security, no donor recognition, nothing. Only him. And the truth, Judge Judy said, her voice descending but only fractionally. You cannot purchase respect. You cannot acquire dignity. You cannot lease humility. You cannot invest your way to decency. These require being earned. She paused. And you have earned none of them today. The room went absolutely still. Judge Judy closed the folder. You announced that you owned this city, But cities do not preserve the memory only of men who hold title to its buildings.